I would never buy a home in the UK. Here's why. Scully Nomad here, hope you are well. It's Friday night, so cheers and an extra special welcome to another hotel room. If you're new to the channel, I tend to do more car repair videos and boat projects along with a little bit of exploring, and then I also do this type of content where I answer your questions. That said, feel free to ask any questions and I'll put a list of videos that I'm working on at the moment, and here we go. Now, the subscriber asked if I would give up my nomadic lifestyle and all the events and settle down and get a regular job and buy a house and do all that type of stuff. Now, the reason I do events is because it gives me the freedom to travel. So I've been all over the world, not for work. It's a case of when I stop working, I go abroad on holiday. So that tends to be between January and April, because in the UK, the weather's not very good and there's not much work. So to ditch the cost of living here, I do that. The way I get around things is during the summer, I'm mostly working on road shows, which is why I'm in hotels a lot of the time. And between the hotels, I do stay at my parents' quite a lot, and they live near the National Exhibit Centre in Birmingham, and there's a lot of events there, and I tend to fill a few gaps here and there. And then I also own a boat. Now, the reason I own a boat all comes down to a few years ago. Basically, I'd saved £24,000 to try and get a house. So it was basically at the time a 10% deposit, and I could not get a mortgage. So as a single person at the time, I'm single now. So this was about 6 years ago. I couldn't get a mortgage. So I've been working as much as I could to kind of keep the consistency up. I didn't go on holiday or anything. And if you want to learn a bit more about my financial situation and the rocky road of boat ownership for me, where I talk about my accident and all the rest of the type of stuff about lockdown, I do have another video on it, and I'll put that on the link at the end. And in the video, I talk about my plans of what I wanted to do, and it's definitely been a case of health and wealth problems. I do have a boat tour video, which I encourage you to watch again after this video. The primary reason, I do have other reasons, but the main reason is the housing affordability. So the average house price, according to the government's website, is £289,000 for the UK. Now, mortgage lenders will only lend you around 4.5 times your average salary. So with that in mind, now remember, we're only talking about the UK average house, okay, which is £289,000. Now, we'll assume that I've got a 10% deposit, which would be £28,900. That would mean borrowing £261,100. Now, if we assume the rule of you can borrow 4.5 times your salary, that would mean I would need a salary of £57,800. Now, bear in mind the UK average salary is 34,000. Let's call it 35,000, and if you are in London, it's basically 44,000. So way off, okay? Way off. All right, let's say if I did find a reckless lender and I got 0% interest and I didn't have any fees on the mortgage, my repayments monthly would be £871. But we'll go on to like a real world interest rate. I know a lot of the mature audience would go, oh well, when I bought my house in the 70s, I was paying 8-9%. Now, over the last 25 years, the historic average from like today going back is around 4 to 5%. So we'll go with 4.5%. Again, we're just doing averages. In the UK, it's quite common for people to do a 2 or 5 year fixed rate mortgage and then refinance. And over the past decade, up until say 2 years ago, the rates have just trended down, which has allowed people to refinance, get bigger houses, or pay less and pay the houses off quicker. But we'll go with 4.5%. So on screen, you see a mortgage repayment calculator. So you see on the left side, you got the initial debt, and we've done it over 25 years. But look at your top left part of the screen, what you've borrowed and what you actually pay back over that time. It's a big difference, but we'll go on to say 3.5 and then down to 2.5. So this is 3.5%. Then we'll go on to the 2.5% just here. But this is from the Money Saving Expert website. I really encourage you to play around with it, because what you can do is you can put in what you've got your mortgage at and then what difference, say, paying an extra £50 a month is, and you'll be surprised how much a little bit extra in your repayments makes a big difference over time. But one of the hardest parts is actually just getting on the property ladder. So as you can see from the examples that I've put on there, I ain't got a chance by myself, and it is just me. So you can see the kind of frustration. I actually did come across an article the other day which was pretty interesting, and I can see why. While I was scrolling through, I think it was Yahoo Finance or something like that, I came across this article, and then it kind of led me to this one. And apparently we're the second worst for mental health in the world, which is pretty impressive. Now I've got quite a dry sense of humour, as you'll probably pick up if you do subscribe, which you should. Another reason why I want to leave the UK is because everything is expensive. So we've just talked on about the affordability of housing, but we also have the new budget coming up in the end of October. So at the moment, a lot of millionaires and billionaires are actually fleeing the UK. And now, since we were talking about mental health as well, the government, long may they reign of course, they're actually going to be hiking a load of taxes at the end of October. So I'm pretty sure we're going to be number one in worst for mental health in the world. So I think we'll do pretty well there, because obviously no one's going to have any money left. So far they've cut the old people's heating allowance. So they reckon around 4,000 old people are going to die in their own homes because they won't be able to afford heating. As a high mileage driver, I have also heard several things, one of which is removing the 5p fuel duty freeze. So 5p a litre has been frozen for a long time. They're going to remove that, so your fuel probably going to go up 5p a litre. I'm looking to buy a van and convert it into a camper van. So at the minute I get hit by the clean air zones because my 60 miles to the gallon car is not energy efficient enough apparently. But also EVs don't put out any emissions, so the government is basically stuck by not being able to raise enough taxes. So they're looking to make it fairer on everybody, and by introducing a pay by mile scheme. Now I want to buy a van and convert it into a camper van, and that way I can go on adventures but also use it for work. So I work all over the country, and at the minute, because I do get hit by the clean air zones, I've not been able to do certain jobs, especially in Birmingham, my hometown, Bristol, which is along the way to the boat. So I've basically just been skipping a load of what could have been opportunities, which is just not worth it when you do the income tax, the national insurance, the student loan repayment, the parking, the fuel, and the clean air zone. On £100 day, for example, after all those costs and everything, you're looking about 30 quid for the whole day. Alright, so we've talked about mortgages, standard living and taxes. Let's move on to rents. So why don't I rent a place? Let's look at the averages. Now the average, I don't know why the Office of National Statistics don't show the overall average for it, but for England it's 1,300, for Wales 736, and for Scotland £957. Overall an increase of 8.5 to 9.3% in the space of a year. The rent has gone up. What about going via the social housing route for the government, right? So there's 1.29 million people apparently on the waiting list, according to the latest that I could find anyway, information, which was the 6th of March of this year. That's a lot of people waiting. Any of you guys have any suggestions on what I could do? Please let me know in the comments below. I was just looking at the average room rents across the board, and apparently that's £700 a month. For the year that would be £8,400 to rent a room in somebody's house. I do have experience renting, so I did have a place in Manchester a few years ago, and I lived with a girlfriend at the time, but what happened is when she bounced I ended up being by myself, and I found myself in an apartment that I couldn't afford anymore by myself. So I ended up kind of sofa serving for about 6 months. I mean, it was a little while back, but my aunt and uncle was staying at my parents' house at the time while they were having a house built over in Ireland, so there's basically no room for me. I've also rented a room in someone's house before, and after a few months they were just like, look, it's not really working out. So again, I just found myself out. So it's been definitely a rocky road. Now I found myself out at that place because of the owner selling up, which is fair enough. You know, the house prices has gone up. He wanted to sell and he wanted to leave. Don't blame the guy. But anyway, I'm going to wrap it up because I'm working 9 till 6 tomorrow, followed by a 4 to 5 hour drive. But I do have the car MOT next week, which means I'll probably have another car repair video coming up, depending on how well that goes or how badly it goes. Who knows on these things. And then I've got my dinghy restore project that I'm doing at the moment. And then of course anything coming along. I am going to be at the motorhome and caravan show, and I think it's in a couple of weeks time as I release this video. So if you see me about there, feel free to say hi, but I might film the area. I don't know. It depends how busy I am. But thanks for watching. Thanks for being fans. See you later.